The DaVinci Resolve Fusion page looks a bit busy on my screen, but I've opened quite a few of the panels so I can just explain as we go along. In this video, I'll be going through some of the panels, but not all of the panels, and in future videos, deep dive into all the panels. So this is just an overview, ideal for beginners, and it's made up of 4 key areas. At the bottom, this is our work area. This is where we're going to do most of the work, and we've got our nodes, splines, and keyframes. Above the work area, we have the viewers, and these viewers are independent. We've got viewer 1 on the left and viewer 2 on the right. On the right hand side, we have where the inspector sits. On the left hand side, we have the media pool and the effects library share the left hand side. And this is because the media pool is only in DaVinci Resolve. It's not in the Fusion standalone. So I've closed all the panels and I'm going to start in the menus in the top left. So right at the top, we've got the menus that are on every page, and we'll use them as we go along. Starting at the top, we have the media pool. Now the media pool, as I said, is only in DaVinci Resolve. It's not in the standalone version of Fusion. Now you can use the media pool to bring in media and assets into Fusion. Next to that, we've got the effects library. This is hugely important, and you're going to spend a lot of time looking through the effects library and finding the different effects that you want. There's a lot more effect here than you're going to find on the cut or the edit page. Next to the effect is the clips. Now the clips is only in DaVinci Resolve. It's not in the standalone, but it's extremely powerful because it shows you all the clips on your timeline. You can right click and you can do versioning with compositions and create new compositions from this clips timeline in Fusion. So you're not jumping backwards and forwards between the edit and the Fusion page, we're just staying in Fusion. From the clips, we've then got the node option. Now we tend to leave the nodes open and we use the nodes a lot, but you can switch the nodes off if you want to review your work in a big viewer. Over on the right hand side, we've then got the spline editor. Now I'm going to just lift this up a little bit to show you. With the panel highlighted, and you can see it's highlighted because it's got a red line underneath. If you press F4, then it will open it fully. What this is a depiction of all your keyframes and your curves. Now what we're looking at is actually anim curves, so there's no keyframe in there at all, but this is how you refine your animation to be really, really precise. Next to spline, we've got the keyframe editor. Now the keyframe editor, if I highlight all the nodes, we can then see in the keyframe editor what comes up, and press F4, we can see all the nodes. If we can drop down the nodes, then we can see this is expressions. It will show you the expressions that are in the nodes. And what you can do, it's 149 frames. It's actually 150 frames because it starts at 0. We can use this to retime things and move keyframes around your clip so you've got perfect timing. You can also, in your keyframing, down here we've got a spreadsheet. We can actually enter keyframes in by entering numbers in a spreadsheet. We can put the frame and the keyframe parameter in a spreadsheet, which is super easy and super powerful. Moving on from the keyframes editor, we've got the metadata. Now the metadata is exactly the same as it is on all the other pages, and it's only in DaVinci Resolve. From the metadata, we've then got the inspector. Now the inspector is where we can access all the controls for each individual node. But what we've also got with the inspector is just next to it, we've got the option to expand it to the full length. So we can see the full length of the controls. We can also pin controls. So we've got a little pin up here which will pin this, and then if we bring another one in, then we've got the position. So we can see the controls still for the text, and we can see the controls for the position. We'll go into more depth in a future video. That's the inspector. What we've got is coming down, we've got the transport controls. Now to the left of the transport controls, we actually have time indicator of the start of our composition or our clip and the end of our composition or our clip. And this is slightly different than the standalone version. If you're just using DaVinci Resolve, then this information comes from the clip or the composition or the compound clip, whatever you brought from the timeline will show there. Just to the right of that, we've got audio mute because we can now bring audio into Fusion, and audio shows in the keyframe editor. I don't think it's quite intuitive where the audio is in Fusion, but we've now got full access to audio so we can edit to the beat and things like that. In the middle, we've got our transport controls. Now the transport controls are very similar to all the other pages inside DaVinci Resolve. Me again, I've just noticed when I've been editing, missed something out, seems pretty important. So I'm going to drop it in here just before the transport controls because it is the transport controls. Basically what this is if we go to the forward playhead or the reverse playhead and right click, we get an option menu which is designed for the keyboard shortcut. If you want to move in 1 frame steps forward or 1 frame steps backwards, then this is the default. You have other options. You can move in half frame increments, both backwards and forwards, or multiple frame increments backwards and forwards. So here's the menu. I can have it so when I press the arrow key it moves 2 frames or 10 frames. And we've also got how fast the playback updates, which default is auto, but it may be worth trying the fast or the full to get better performance. In here, what the far left one does, and then the one that's next to the loop, what that does is it will jump to the beginning and the end at the moment, but we can set what's called a render range. Just above the transport controls, this is our time ruler, and this gives you an indication of every frame that we're looking at. Let's say we're going to work between frames 60 and 70. If you hold down the control, click on 60 and drag to 70. What this is now set is the render rate. So everything to the left of that yellow line isn't going to render. It's available to view, but it's not going to render. Everything to the right of that line, again, is available to view, but it's not going to render. And now what these controls do is move between the render range. Now it's actually just coming to frame 69 rather than 70. So I'm going to move that over 1 and it comes to frame 70. So these move backwards and forwards in here. The play will also only play inside 60 and 70, and at the moment it's on loop, and then we press play. It will just play that once. We can also right click here and we can ping pong. So what we can do is it'll play backwards and forward in between that render range. So rather than render absolutely everything on the screen, we're just concentrating on those 10 frames where we're working at the moment. What we can also do, this is quite small and it's like, well, there's 10 frames there, I need to deal with 10 frames. Below the time ruler, we've got this silver bar. If you come to the end of the silver bar and grab it, what we can do is we can actually zoom in. We can go to each end and we can zoom in on those 10 frames. We've still got access to what's after it and what's before, but we're working within these 10 frames and it's going to be far easier to render, etc. If you right click any side of the transport controls, we've got a context menu, and in the context menu we've got high quality, and this is to do with the quality of the viewers. So it depends what you're working on. If you're doing fine detail you may want high quality, but in general you don't necessarily need high quality. Below that is motion blur, and you've got motion blur throughout the whole system. It renders every frame, so you can turn off motion blur to save a lot of CPU usage. We also have the option for proxy and auto proxy inside Fusion, and what this is actually going to do is make a proxy for the viewers, so it's going to render things out a little bit, mainly in the cache for the viewers. And then below that we've got the playback loop and the ping pong to go backwards and forwards. On the right hand side, this is where your playhead is. At the moment it's 66 and the playhead on the time ruler is at 66. You'll notice it's got 0.0 after it. What this can do is actually it can go deeper than a frame, so you can get your timings very easy. We could actually go 66.5 in here and we're going to go into that portion of the frame, or even 66.1. If we wanted to drop a keyframe there and get it precise, then we can actually put in any figure in there. Below the transport controls we have a toolbar, and this toolbar is specifically designed for beginners. It's got all the most popular nodes that you're going to use when you first start out using DaVinci Resolve and Fusion. There's several ways to use this toolbar to add nodes to your composition or your node tree. You can drag a node down into the node graph from that toolbar, but as you'll notice that background node is highlighted, and if we wanted to connect a text to that background node, what we can do is come up to the text, and just click it once, and it's going to add that text to the background node. But DaVinci Resolve knows that you need a merge node to connect a text and a background together, so it adds that for you. So when you learn in DaVinci Resolve Fusion, by using this toolbar, it's going to show you what nodes are required to connect certain nodes to certain nodes, which is very, very powerful. As you develop, you can change this toolbar, any side of it. If you right click, you've got the option to customize. and we can come down and we can create a brand new toolbar, giving it a name and then putting in our own tools. So for example, I've created one called S-Shapes, and when I'm building a title with S-Shapes, which are super powerful, I've now just got my controls I require for S-Shape. There is an Easter egg inside DaVinci Resolve, and if you've watched some of my previous videos, you may have seen it. What we can do is we can have toolbars that are floating, so we can have a toolbar all over the place. In fact, I'm going to pause the video and set some up and just show you. What I've done is I've jumped in and I've built some custom toolbars for my project. Now, by default, they all go to the top, but what I can do is I can grab this one and put this one on the left. I can then grab this one and put this one on the right. I can grab this one and put this one on the bottom, and then I've got this one on the top. Or I could pull this out and I can have it here in my node graph. So you have the option to put multiple toolbars all over your screen, even floating, for when you're working in DaVinci Resolve. So as you move forward, then you can customize the whole toolbar experience and node experience tremendously. And there's more. Just above the viewers, we've got some options, so we'll have a look at these now. In the top left, we have the zoom. We can either fit the viewer to the space that we've got, or have it 25, 50, 100, 200 or 400%. We can also do this with keyboard shortcuts. If I use my scroll wheel, this will just go up and down, but if I hold my control and scroll, I can zoom in, and it zooms in to the mouse. So if I put the mouse down here, it'll zoom in here. If I put the mouse over viewer 1, it's going to zoom in here. If you want to reset that, you can just select fit. Another handy keyboard shortcut for the viewer is the middle mouse button. Now it depends on what mouse you've got. If you hold down the middle mouse button, you can drag the viewer around in its pane. Next to fit, we've got the buffers, and the buffers allow you to place 2 nodes into one viewer. The default is buffer A, so we're looking at buffer A here, which is the Blackmagic Fusion, and again in this window we've got buffer A in this window. If I come to buffer B, I can actually put another node into this viewer, so we've now got the DaVinci Resolve. So buffer A is the Blackmagic Fusion, buffer B is the DaVinci Resolve, and now we can split them. So we can come down to split view, and we get the split view. Now do be careful what controls you grab hold of, because you can move the text. You need to come into this box that says A and B, and now we've got a split view of the viewers, 2 nodes per viewer. Next up, these are subviews. Now subviews only available in 2D, so if we select this, we then get a subview. This is having a look at down to the pixels. We've got a nice magnifier, and then we've got all these other options here as well. So that's your subview options, and we'll go in further detail as we build compositions, because there's quite a lot there. Next, we've got the region of interest. Now, selecting this icon turns region of interest on and off, and it is a super powerful tool to help you with complex compositions because it helps with the rendering. I'll do a quick demonstration. If I switch it on, you can see a bounding box right on the edge of my screen outside the canvas. Now, this is the area that is going to render. If I come down to the drop-down menu, it is auto by default. Now the reason I haven't zoomed out to show you is because it's still going to stay where it is. So I need to switch off auto and then I can zoom out. Everything here is being rendered, but I might only be working on this text here. Down here I might be doing some animation in this text. So what I can do is I can go set and I can just highlight the text. Now it doesn't seem to do anything now, we've just got a bounding box around the text, but this is super important because the only pixels that are rendering on that screen are within that bounding box. So now instead of rendering 2 million pixels, we're probably only rendering 10,000 pixels, and that makes a huge difference on what you're doing in the viewer. Next one along is color, and this is so we can look at either red, green, blue or alpha. At the moment the default is color, but if we switch alpha then you get the same effect as on the edit and the cut page. On the edit and the cut page the alpha shows as black, but we can change this in Fusion, and the keyboard shortcut to do that is just A, so we can switch on alpha, press C, it goes back to the color channel. I'm just going to mention the next one briefly because I'm not a colorist, but this is your LUT. DaVinci Resolve Fusion is before your color grades. It does not show any of your color grades, and you can tell the flow at the bottom of the screen. We've got media, cut, edit, fusion, and then color. What you might want to do is to drop a LUT onto your footage if you're using a log footage, etc. sure you drop a LUT on so you can get the colours and you can work inside Fusion before you do your colour grading. Next one, and this is on both sides, these duplicate on each viewer. This is to have a single viewer, so if you just wanted to have this viewer separately, you could click this icon, or if we come back over to the top right, we've got this viewer which brings back both viewers. And the way it works is this will single viewer 1, and over here we'll single viewer 2. And then we've got the 3-dot menu above each viewer. If we select this, we've got some options in here. Snap to pixel, if you're using polylines or splines, then the control point will snap to a pixel location. Show controls will toggle whatever on-screen controls are visible for the current selected node. Region provides all the settings for the regions of interest in the viewer. Smooth resize, and this option uses a smoother bilinear interpolated resizing method. Show square pixels overrides the auto aspect correction when using formats with non-square pixels, and checkered underlay toggles a checkerboard underlay that makes it easier to see area of transparency. Normalized color range allows for the visualization of brightness values outside of the normal viewing range. Gain and gamma exposes a simple pair of gain and gamma sliders that lets you adjust the viewer's brightness. 360 view is used to properly display spherical images. Stereo is used to properly display stereoscopic images. I'll just reset this to fit, and then right click in a viewer gives you more viewer options, and it depends on what node you've got for added options. We've got a context menu of what we've gone through at the top, but we have some other options in here, so we can come down, we can load images into Fusion, so we can just bring in that image straight in, and then because I've brought an image, it gives you options here of what we can do. We can then save an image, which is excellent for building the thumbnails for macros. We've got all our LUTs, then we've got some global options where we've got buffer options and dither and checker and background color. We've got options for controls, stereo, views, and we can lock the display, and then we've got some more settings here. Depending on what node you selected, you will then get more below this menu, which is specific to that node. I've opened all the panels again, and I'm just going to show you a few little things before we finish off. The first one is with the media pool. Now the media pool is available on every page. I'm not going to go in great detail because it's not the best thing to be using to bring in assets into Fusion. There was a question of somebody that wanted the media pool at the bottom and the effects library at the top. The answer to that is we can't do it, but there is a little bit of a hack or a workaround to do it. And what we can do is if we go over any bin, and of course I've only got the master bin here, and right click, you'll see the option to open as a new window, and we can select that, and now the media pool, fully functioning media pool, opens in a new window, which gives us the opportunity to close down the media pool here, and we could have this halfway if we want. The media pool's gone in the background if you're on a single screen, so I can bring it back, but we've now got a floating media pool that you can adjust the size and you can put anywhere you want on any screen you want and work with the media pool open, say for example on a second monitor, and your effects library open on this monitor. Another thing to point out is the interface in Fusion is far more flexible than any other page. What you can do, we can grab hold of here and we can stretch it all the way across if we want. We can have a look through our tools. We can also go the other way, we can get rid of it completely. Bit pointless that, because you can just switch it off. We can also grab here and extend that a little bit, but it will stop because of these. We can't really hide these, but we can move these across. With the inspector, we can open the inspector a little bit more. The inspector's restricted and it stops there. This is bigger than you get on the edit page. So that's it. You've seen the interface of DaVinci Resolve Fusion. If you've got any comments, then drop them down below. Any questions, any things you want to see in future videos, then let me know and I'll add them to the list. What I'm doing is trying to record ahead of time. If you make a suggestion, it might be in a few weeks' time when I get round to recording it. So bear with me, and thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.